Hello YouTubers, I want to welcome you to another edition of Bargain Bin Gear. In this installment, I would like to address the issue of pedal boards. And I don't know about you, but for me, to really create a pedal board that I would like to use, it needs certain things, okay? And one of the first ones is a MIDI controller, a MIDI foot controller to be precise. And there are tons of different kinds, but essentially they all do the same kind of thing. Okay, and just for those who aren't aware, usually you have an effects pedal, okay, on your board, okay, and if it's a MIDI capable pedal, that means that it will usually have presets of different sounds, okay, on that pedal. In other words, you could have one pedal, and preset 1 could be a chorus sound, preset 2 could be a delay sound, and on and on and on. Okay, and that's fine. So usually you can just hit it on and off, you know. Or you've got to bend down and turn knobs and things to access the different presets and so on. Okay, and that's fine if you only got one pedal. But now let's say you add a second and a third and maybe even a fourth or fifth pedal. Okay? And this is where things get interesting. Because if they're MIDI capable pedals, they all have different sound, different presets. And as a result, you may have found some combinations of pedals to create one sound that you really like. And that sound may be, let's say, a chorus delay sound. And on the first pedal you access a chorus sound, and on the second pedal, let's say, a delay sound. Right? Now, you could always, dial in each pedal every time you want to access that sound. That's one way of doing it. But, especially if you're playing live or recording, right? It'd be very difficult to do because you'd have to bend over and access the pedal. And also, it would take a lot of time to dial in the exact preset that you wanted, right? So, this is why you have a MIDI foot controller. Okay, let's say you had two pedals on your pedal board. Okay, and each of them had presets. And you had some of your favorite sounds are a combination of one of the presets on each pedal, right? Combined together to make one sound that you really like. Right? And in itself that's fine, but let's say you're playing live or recording and you want to hit a second foot switch, right? And use those same pedals again, but with different presets to mix together to create another great sound that you really like. Right? So what to do? Well, if you're playing live especially, or recording or looping and that kind of thing, you don't have time to bend down and change the knobs setting and call up each preset on each pedal, right? That would get very old very quickly. So what's the solution? Well, of course it's a MIDI foot controller. Okay, and what the MIDI foot controller does is basically it will control both of those pedals, right? So that on the MIDI foot controller, you can hit one switch and it will change the sound on each pedal to the preset that you'd like. In other words, one preset, you could hit one button and it would change, the first pedal to the chorus sound, the second pedal to the delay sound. And then for a second preset on the MIDI foot controller, you could hit that and it would change, let's say, the sound on the first pedal, right, to, let's say, a reverb, right, and then the second pedal to a flanger sound or something. And the combination of the two creates a preset sound. So essentially, that's what a MIDI foot controller does. Okay. On its own, it doesn't make any sound at all. And in fact, the only thing it does really is control MIDI-capable pedals. Right? If you have any on your pedal board. And they're usually done with program changes. However, MIDI controllers these days, MIDI foot controllers, can also send continuous controller messages to those pedals. So not only can they change presets, but within those presets they can say, change the delay time to a longer time, right? Or even as a volume pedal, turn down the volume on the second pedal, those kinds of things. So you can get a lot of really precise control over your pedal board sounds. And beyond that, some, not all, can also control tempo of the pedals via MIDI as well. Now, sounds a little complicated, right? And I think the complication comes in the form of programming the MIDI foot controller, because each pedal you've got to put in a program change and any continuous controller messages that you want, right, into something they call a macro, right, just a series of commands, and then you hit that button and it will control those pedals. It can be very powerful, but a little complicated, and here is where one controller stands above the rest, in my opinion. And it's the MIDI foot controller we're going to look at today. And it's called the Source Audio Soulman MIDI foot controller. And here's the thing that sets it apart from other foot controllers, MIDI foot controllers. Because usually on a MIDI foot controller, to program in the program changes, the MIDI channel, the continuous controller messages, right? Well, you have to go through a series of hit this button 3 times, hit this one twice, hit this one once, hold it down until you see all this kind of stuff. And it gets really complicated really fast and very frustrating, quite frankly. This is where the Source Audio Soulman MIDI controller sets itself apart, and that is because it has a USB jack and editing software. And I don't know about you, but I would much rather just type in, right, with a computer keyboard on a big screen, computer screen, program change 12, continuous controller 62, channel 11, and on, and create a macro and then save that and be able to just recall it very easily. In other words, it makes the editing process or the programming of the MIDI controller pedal much simpler, than having to actually use, little pedals and switches on the pedal itself to program it. Okay? And, well, let's take a look at it. Okay, and we're going to have an unboxing, an official unboxing, right? Though, in reality, this is a recreation. So please don't try this at home. Only trained professionals should attempt. Okay, so here it is. I woke this morning to this package, and so let's open it up. Here we go. Yep. Wow. Whoa. Now take a look at this. This is the original box. And this is the Source Audio Soulman MIDI foot controller. Let's take a look at it. Here we go. It's a bonus, a double unboxing recreation. Here we go. Now I cannot tell a lie. This wasn't a brand new one, but it's okay. But look at this. It's actually in great shape, man. It's like brand new, almost. So here we get a Soulman MIDI foot controller quick start card right here. And here's the actual unit. And notice it's in a plastic sheath. Wow! Look at that. Okay. And this is quite a beauty. It actually looks really in great shape. Wow! Look at that. See that? That's the Soulman. Source Audio Soulman MIDI foot controller. And to be fair, you may ask, well, what else is in the box? Well, let me show you. A complimentary AC adapter. And it runs on 9 volts, right? And as I recall, I think it's like 100 milliamp or something. Let me see. 70 milliamps. Okay, and this is very good because when you put something like this on your pedal board, if you have a power supply, a pedal board's power supply, that provides power to all your pedals, it will easily power one of these. And you don't need an isolated output for it because it creates no sound on its own. It's only here to control other pedals. And it's very nice because it has quite a few features. If you look here, it has a MIDI in and 2 MIDI outs, right? And that just makes it easy to go out to different MIDI pedals. We'll talk about that later. Okay, and then you have an expression pedal jack right here. And that is for, you could use it as a expression pedal for any of your MIDI pedals. It'll control that. And it sends it off as continuous control messages, right, that you can add to it. Or, and this is very important. Let me show you something. Okay, see how you've got 4 buttons, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. So those are 4 presets, right? And you have 32 banks of 4. That equals 128 presets total in banks of 4. Okay? Now, as it is, right, well, you could use these first 2 switches to go up and down the banks of 32, right? So bank 1, go up 1 to bank 2, and so on and so on. The problem is it takes up 2 of those foot switches. Well, then you're only left with 2 presets, switches, instead of 4. And here's the solution to that, right? And I hope they make this clear, that on the side here, right, you can take one of these 2-button foot switches, right? A good example, I use the Behringer BA12. It's like between 12 and 20 bucks, right? And it basically has 2 buttons, an up button and a down button. Well, you connect that to the source audio, and then all of a sudden, right, with the Behringer 2-button foot switch, you can hit the up button and get your 4 presets, hit the up button again on the Behringer, and get the next 4. It goes up a bank, right? Or you can go down a bank using the Behringer foot switch. Okay, so I'm talking about maybe one of these pedals, right? So you have 2 foot switches. They usually come with, like, or at least did, come with inexpensive Behringer amps. So you had up and down. What I like about these is kind of a roll-in style, in the sense that it doesn't click. So it's real soft, which is really nice for recording. So basically on a pedal board, you have the Soul Man, right? So basically on a pedal board, you have the Soul Man controller here, and then on your pedal board, you'd also have these 2. Alright, so this would decrease or increase the banks, and then you have access to all 4 foot switches as presets. Makes sense. Okay, now, the Soul Man MIDI foot controller, while it's small, is very, very powerful. I mean, you could control easily, you know, you could send a huge macro if you wanted, and a macro is basically a collection of program changes to control different pedals on your pedal board, all by hitting 1 foot switch. So it could change the sounds on each of those pedals, right, at once. And this, of course, is very powerful. And this is how you can get some really nice sounds that you can use very easily. And it's so nice to be able to just hit a button and call them up, right, without having to go to each pedal, find the preset, call it up, go to the next pedal, find it. You know, that doesn't make sense at all. You know, now this requires that the pedals that you have, the effects pedals, have MIDI, right? And I wish all effects pedals had MIDI. And one of the big reasons is because you get a bunch of presets, usually up to 128 presets. In fact, if you remember the old rack mount units, multi-effects units, right, they have MIDI implementation usually, you know, MIDI jacks on the back, and usually had 128 presets, right? Whereas if you don't have MIDI, you know, you can get 1 sound out of your pedal, and to get a different sound, you have to bend down and basically turn the knobs, you know, to get the next sound that you like out of that pedal. So that doesn't make sense either. And it makes it kind of a rip, because you only get 1 sound, pretty much, you know, that you can call up immediately, right? So I always looked for pedals that have MIDI. I'm a big believer in it. Especially keep in mind, you know, when I'm doing looping things, and I want to call up those sounds I really like that require 2 or more pedals, you know, that's an easy way of doing it. And if I had to manually, you know, while I'm recording the loop, you know, or an overdub, let's say, on a loop, you know, and I had to bend down and call up or dial in a sound on a pedal, and then do that for 2 or 3 pedals, you know, it just takes way too long, you know, and especially live, you know, people want to see you playing, they don't want to see you messing around with your pedals. Okay, now, I will say that other MIDI controllers have similar capabilities, but they usually don't have a software editor. I think the Morning Star is a real popular one. It has a little tiny screen, you know, but to edit it, same kind of deal. You gotta, you know, mess with the foot switches, hit them a certain number of times, and that kind of thing. So I wasn't into that at all. Now, another one was a Behringer. Was it the 1010, I think it was? Had an expression pedal. In fact, didn't have two expression pedals. And it was but it was huge. It was a big old pedal board like that. And surprisingly, from what I recall, it had a software editor of sorts, but it was real clumsy, you know. In any case, another advantage of the Source Audio Soulman is with the software editor. You can create different preset lists that you can load to the pedal. In other words, let's say you have a pedal board with, let's say a Synth 9, electro-harmonic Synth 9 pedal, right? But sometimes you take that synth pedal out and put in a Boss SY200 synth pedal that you'd rather use for that particular session or whatever. Then you can have two preset lists, one with the Synth 9 pedal, the electro harmonics, or the Boss SY200. So you can have two different lists and load them, you know, whichever one you want to use to the Soulman. And we'll get into that here shortly. Now, let's talk price. It is not an inexpensive pedal. However, compared to some of the other MIDI controllers, you know, it's not crazy outrageous, in fact. New, I think they're about $249. Okay? That's for brand new. Used market, I mean, it varies depending on where you go and that kind of thing, what condition it's in and all that. And those usually about 170, somewhere in there, you know, give or take. However, it really becomes the brains, if you like, of your pedal board, right? That's a great way to describe it, you know. And it really, you build your pedal board around the Soulman editor, or I'm sorry, the Soulman MIDI controller, right? And all of your MIDI effects pedals become a slave to the MIDI controller, right? I've seen that they have things like the MIDI mouse, for example, you know, and some really tiny little MIDI controllers, and basically they just let you move up and down, you know, the different presets and things. Whereas this isn't a full-fledged MIDI controller where you can have presets and that kind of thing. Anyway, it's really worked for me on my pedal boards. You know, because I like to use multi-effect pedals that have MIDI, right? And so they're capable of all kinds of different sounds, you know. And with this Soulman, I can call them up different sounds, right? Which are a combination of the pedals that I have, you know, by hitting one button, you know. Anyway, so we're going to take a look at it here, and You know, I can definitely say, 'cause I have a couple pedal boards, and I have them on each of my pedal boards. You know, and I'm making a small pedal board here, and so I'm going to have one for that as well. You know, and I'll tell you what, if you're doing any kind of a looping things, you know, and you're using MIDI effects pedals, you know, it really helps a great deal. You know, that you don't have to stop. You know, you're playing, especially when you're recording a loop and things. You know, and then you can just hit a switch and change to whatever sound you want to use. You know, so I'm really pleased with it. You know, and this one, you know, as I said, it wasn't new, but I plugged it in, it seemed fine. Now, the software editor, even if you don't have a Soul Man editor, I think you can download the software, right? And take a look at the software, you know, and see what it's entailed, what is entailed, because it really has 3 different functions: scenes, preset lists, and then what they call panel, which is what I would use is the panel function with the 4 preset switches and set up in banks. But you can also create a set list where you basically choose scenes and organize them together to go from one scene to the next. And a scene is basically, you know, a preset pretty much, right? It's a little confusing. I mean, you got to get your head around it here. You know, but I'll tell you what, it sure beats, you know, having to hit little switches and trying to figure out, okay, this is channel, whatever it is, you know, and program change and so on and so on. So it's just real nice to be able to type it in on there. And as you'll see, it also allows you to set tap tempo, and it can send MIDI clock and all kinds of extra little functions here and there that make a big difference as well. So while it is perhaps a sizely investment, you know, the fact that it acts as the brains of your pedal board, you know, I wouldn't say it's essential, but pretty darn close, you know, especially if you're going to be using a lot of different pedals and combinations of pedals, you know. I mean, sometimes you can just use it, make a preset where you turn everything off or turn one pedal on. You can do that as well, you know. So it serves a lot of different functions. And it's very nice because it's small, compact, and it would fit on most pedal boards. Okay, so as part of this Pedalboard build, the Soul Man MIDI controller, and very first thing is to test it out, right? So I connected it to a computer, and it's right here. Here it is. It's powered up. Okay, and right now it has a USB cable going to the computer, and then a MIDI cable only going to one pedal, and that's the Eventide H9 right here. See that? Okay. Right there. Now, let's take a look at a couple of things here. And here I'm actually using first the H9 software, and H9 control, it's called, is actually to control the Eventide right here. Hopefully you can take a look at that. But basically, I'm setting up here the settings for the H9 to be able to be controlled via MIDI. right? So in other words, here's it says MIDI receive channel, right? It says off right now, but then I would go here and switch it to channel 5. Okay, well, with MIDI you have up to 16 channels, you'll see here. And the reason is because when you have multiple pedals, right, you would assign each pedal its own receive channel, right? So up to 16 devices. So here, channel 5. And why channel 5? I don't know. I just picked that. So the Eventide will always receive on channel 5. So basically, I just got that set up here for the Eventide to basically be able to be controlled via MIDI. Now here is the Soulman editor, right? And there's a bunch of stuff there. And this is what really sets it apart from other MIDI controllers. Okay, and I'll try to kind of explain what's going on here. The very first thing I did is, well, besides updating the firmware, because this, I had firmware 1.7, and now it's 1.10 is the most current software. Okay. So this Soulman controller hadn't been used in a while, I guess. You know. Okay. Now, it's kind of confusing. You have to kind of wrap your head around it, in that there's quite a lot going on here in this controller. And the section we're concerned about is this bottom section. Oops. Hold on a second. Right here. Right, if you can follow the mouse. This area. Notice you've got right here, foot switch name, and here you've got 1, 2, 3, 4. And this can be set up all different kind of ways, and basically controls how the switch on the little preset on the Soulman controller and what they do, right, and how they work. Now, notice here, message type, right, I set it to right here, on this first one. See where it says macro, message type macro, right, and go down here, macro on, macro off, and it's set to macro 0, macro 3. Now, what that is that up here, right, on here, and this is what is really nice, whoops, is on the macros, right, there's a pull down menu, and all these are macros, right. Now they're empty for the most part for the moment. I only did like just as a test to see that it worked. So macro 0, I added a program change. For example, you could click on add, right, and then right here you can set it to send a continuous controller, program change, node on, node off, system exclusive messages, right, so on and so on. And right now I'm just dealing with the program change MIDI messages, which are really the kind of simplest. Then you can also send continuous controllers. But basically, so I would set this to program change, right? And remember we set the MIDI channel to 5. So I would switch that to 5 up here, right here. And then the data value. And for the data value, right now we're just changing presets, right? So If you want preset 62, you would type in 62 right here in the data value and so on. Okay. Then, and that's macro 0, which is right here. Okay. And there it is. It's macro 0. So when I click that switch, it'll run the whatever program changes are in this macro 0 here, up here. Okay. And then I did another one for macro 01. Okay, and all that is just another program change on channel 5 to the second preset, basically. And if you take a look, then down here on the second foot switch, you have it here. Same thing, macro, but this time it's going to macro 01 instead of the first switch going to 0. And then when macro is off, it's macro 3, right? In other words, when I click that switch a second time, basically, you can turn it on or off. Then if you go up here, and for macro 3, I put a program change, right, for the H9, which is value 125. Okay, and all that means is just basically it'll bypass the unit. And that's macro 3, right? So in other words, what we want to have happen is when I click the first foot switch, right, it should go to preset, make sure that's right, 62. When I click it again, it should go, right, to just bypass the pedal. And then if I click on the second switch here, right, it should go to preset 3 the first time I hit it, and then when I hit it again, it should bypass the unit. So there on the MIDI controller here, you've got switch 1 and switch 2. So here you go, I'm going to hit the first foot switch, which will engage the macro. And let's see, take a good look at what happens on the H9. So I click the first one, and there it is. It turns on, and it goes to preset 62. Okay, when I hit the first switch again, it bypasses the pedal. Okay, now if I hit switch 2, here we go. All of a sudden, the H9 gets engaged and goes to preset 3. Okay, if I hit it again, it bypasses it. So it's working. And I'm able to control the H9. Now, you can do a ton of different things to control the pedal. I mean, you can change even volumes, input gain, all kinds of stuff. But here, this is just a real basic of basics. Just basically switching presets and bypassing the pedal. Okay? And, you know, I have other pedals that I'll pretty much do the same thing for. Okay? They'll each be assigned a MIDI channel. And this is where it becomes so powerful, is the macros, right? I can put a command to basically turn on the H9, right, with a preset of my choice. In this case, it's number 3, right? And I can choose to either have the H9 on or off. Right here it's off, and there it's on. And you can see that little LED on the left-hand corner turning on and off right here. So that's off, that's on. And if I hit the first switch again, goes back to 62 as a preset. right? And if I hit it again, it'll bypass the pedal. Here's the second switch, goes to 3, right? And it's turned on. Or hit it again on the second switch on the Soul Man, and boom, it's bypassed. So it really works really well. And again, I'll do the same thing again for the different pedals and things. So this is just a testing area. It looks messy because of all the cables and stuff. We'll take care of that soon enough. But, so that's where I'm at the moment. And so this also lets me know that the Soul Man is working very well. You know, I didn't get like a bad unit or anything. Okay. And you see when you have the macros, right, for each little foot switch. And by the way, if you take a look at the software here, right, here are the 4 foot switches, right, that you can command to do what you want it to. Right, 3 and 4. But over here, notice it says panel 0. Okay, and if you click this, there's a pull down menu, and you see that panel, and there's basically panel 63, from basically 0 to 63. Okay. And each panel holds 4 presets, right, for the 4 foot switches. So you can imagine how many presets you can recall on your pedal. Quite amazing. Here. All right. So, and this software, you know, it was just downloaded from the website. It was free, you know. And here, to the left of that, you have your general global options here. Where if you wanted to send out tap tempo or MIDI clock and so on, right? And then these 2 areas right here, up here, the scenes area and the set list. I'm not really messing with that. I don't really use that for basically for our purposes at the moment. Now maybe in the future, we'll see. All right, so I just want to show you that we're ready to go as far as that goes. Okay, so the Soul Man Source Audio MIDI foot controller that I was sent works great, and boy, is it powerful. I mean, really, I've just scratched the surface here. Beyond just basic program changes and bypassing, you know, the pedals and so on, it can do a lot more than that, you know. And we'll delve into that. But for right now, it's basically set up and ready to go when I actually put the pedal board together, you know. And yeah, it's just, man, I'm just blown away though. It is very powerful. And I'll tell you what, it's complicated enough. I'm so glad that it has that editing software. It makes all the difference in the world. You know, especially when you start getting into assigning program changes and continuous controllers messages, you know. And as you saw, you have that box where you can write a macro, and it kind of writes it for you, really. You just tell it, you know, what continuous controller message you want to send and what preset you want to send and that kind of thing. And it was also a good way to test it. Make sure it didn't send me a dud, you know. So that's a good thing. Alright, now There's still more to come, believe me. But this is a good first step. And there's something I noticed too that I have to rectify. And that is, remember I was going to use this, right, to go through the different panels, right, of 4 presets. You know, like banks, basically. Go down a bank or go up a bank. You know, and each bank has 4 of the presets. And that's just fine, except for one thing. It's a 1/4-inch jack right here. And to hook up to the Soul Man, you need a 1/8 inch jack. Basically a little tiny, little headphone jack. Instead of the larger 1/4-inch headphone jack. And I may have one around here somewhere. I'm going to look for it. If not, I did look on Amazon, and you can get an adapter. And there's 2 choices for adapters. You can either have a little cable, right, that this would plug into, and then the other end would have the 1/8 inch jack. Okay, and I saw a really nice one, but it was about $11. Ouch. Right? They also had some less expensive ones, and they were in the $4 to $5 range, And then the hardware adapters, instead of a cable, it's just an adapter about this size, and this plugs into it, and the end is just a 1/4 inch, or is a 1/8 inch jack, and those are really cheap, like $2 or something, However, one thing you want to keep in mind, it's going on a pedal board, so you don't want a huge thing, sticking out here that's taking up space, right? Because you want the pedals close together as far as that goes, so you don't want that sticking out if you can avoid it. And I think I have an adapter that's actually has a right angle end on it, right? So it won't take up much space on there. Okay, well, for right now, this is where we're at. And I'm going to do a series here on this Pedalboard Build. And I'm going to be adding some things, as I receive them and that kind of thing. So we'll see what happens with this right angle adapter. Alright, very good. See you next time. Okay, bye.